To be honest, I was totally inspired by the Anne Frank story, by her resilience, by a lot in that story. And I'll say that because, I didn't know too much of her story. Actually, I thought she was in an attic somewhere and she was writing. Then after the war, her writings were found, and I didn't know all the nuance and context that went into the story. So, in learning that and going through that process, I've been just totally inspired. And welcome everybody to episode 39 of Stack Sats or Die Trying. 39. Steven Jackson, there you go. Atlanta Falcons and the Rams, Steven Jackson. I always got a number for y'all. Steven Jackson. Welcome to episode 39 of Stack Sats or Die Trying. For those who don't know, this is the Bitcoin only show brought to you by Buy the Hood as well as the Black Wealth Rebels. I'm your host as always. My name is Jimmy. Shout out to everybody who left great feedback on the last episode, the last couple episodes, man. The feedback I've been getting has been so crazy, man. Everybody telling me the show is getting better and better and better. I'm going to continue to every week talk about Bitcoin. You know what I'm saying? The show will continue to get better. Right now, as we go through this process, you are witnessing greatness. If I do say so myself, you know what I'm saying? I'm in the zone right now creating this content. So you're witnessing greatness right now, man.
Greatness. Greatness happened?
Greatness.
Really?
You got a chance to witness greatness at its highest order. Skip, what word do I want to use? Was this the crescendo? Was this the zenith? The apex? The denouement?
That's a good word. I like that word. That's a good Hollywood word.
And I know you may be a little bit confused about his show title, right? The show title is, what Anne Frank taught me about Bitcoin and real estate, right? But I do have to say this as we get into the topic, for this specific episode, is that a lot of because I put content out and a lot of comments on the content. I was been traveling. I was at a real estate data science conference in Amsterdam in Europe, and spoke at the conference, killed it. Dropped my locks and wire bars. Thing about the old days though is they're the old days. Our profession is becoming more transparent.
The thing about the old days, the old days.
And got out of there. But one of the things that I did while in Amsterdam was visit the Anne Frank house, man. And to be honest, I was totally inspired by the Anne Frank story, by her resilience, by a lot in that story. And I'll say that because, I didn't know too much of her story. Actually, I thought she was in an attic somewhere and she was writing. Then after the war, her writings were found, and I didn't know all the nuance and context that went into the story. So in learning that and going through that process, I've been just totally inspired and, wanted to make this video. So the thing is, the way my brain works, and, I got family and friends that they think something's wrong with me, but I run everything through the framework of Bitcoin and real estate, because that's just how I'm trained at this point. So when I look at any situation, it could be a song lyric, it could be a movie, it could be anything that you can think of. And I'm thinking about, how does this relate to Bitcoin? Or how does this relate to, to real estate? And that's just how my brain tends to work, man. So even though I was visiting the Anne Frank house and I was inspired in a whole other way, as I'm going through this, I definitely thought about Bitcoin and real estate, man. And I also want to say this because since the last time I recorded an episode, we did hit 100K. So I want to, I got to make sure I mention that people are still haters. I know we had a, slight pullback. We about like 94K as I record this. But if you still don't believe at this point and you're still hating and saying it's worthless, I mean, you're just not a serious person. I can't take you serious at all.
You're such fucking dopes. You are not serious figures.
But at the end of the day, I understand that folks are going to feel how they feel, and I'm okay with that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not here to argue. I'm here to educate and give my perspective and talk about the way I see the world. But like I said, I was inspired by the Anne Frank house. But I want to give a little bit of context because I know I can't be the only one who does not know the full story. And I'm not going to give you the full story, but I do want to add a little bit of context. You can do your own Googles, your own research to get specifics. But I do want to give a little bit of background before we get into the conversation for those who have no idea who Anne Frank is or was, I shall say. So Anne Frank was a young Jewish girl who lived in Germany during World War II. When the Nazis came to power, her family fled to the Netherlands to escape persecution. I mean, that's where I was. I was in, I was in Amsterdam. So that's where the Anne Frank house is located. Anyway, but I digress. In 1942, they were forced to go into hiding in a secret annex above her father's office to avoid being captured by the Nazis and then sent to a concentration camp. During this time, Anne kept a diary and she documented her experiences, her hopes, and all of her fears. The thing about Anne Frank's story is it matters because it gives you a first-hand account of the horrors of the Holocaust and the impact that it had on ordinary people. And her diary gives a unique perspective on the resilience of the human spirit and its importance of hope, even in the darkest times. It's a reminder of the dangers of prejudice, hatred, and the importance of just fighting for justice and human rights. So her story continues to inspire people around the world to kind of stand up against injustice and to cherish the value of every human life. You know what I mean? So how does this relate to Bitcoin or real estate? I know this is what you're thinking right now, and it's okay. I'm going to give you my perspective. I relate everything to real estate and Bitcoin. But I actually walked through the house in terms of where they were hiding. Before, so I got a little bit of the narrative from one of the people that worked there about the specific story. And the first thing that came to mind for me was the power of a network, right? And what I mean by that is they were in hiding for a couple of years, but there were people who were willing to risk their lives and put their lives on the line to make sure that they can hide from the Nazis, right? That was the power of their network. So it really was about relationships and things that they've built up over time. So when the ish hits the fan, they had people literally willing to risk their lives to protect them. That's network power. How does that relate to Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin, the power of Bitcoin, the value of Bitcoin is the network. Now, I'm not just talking about the computer network, although it is the biggest computer network in the world. I'm talking about the network of people that are in the Bitcoin space. If you're watching this, you're kind of a part of the network, even if you haven't necessarily ran a node or purchased Bitcoin or done anything. The more people that wake up and understand the value of this asset, the stronger the network becomes. The more people that run nodes, the stronger the network becomes. The more people that mine, the stronger the network becomes. And the network is growing and growing and growing exponentially to the point where it can withstand attacks, right? That was one of the ways I thought about it. Now, I know I said Bitcoin and real estate. This is a Bitcoin show, but my unique perspective that I bring to the space, because there are a lot of people that create content around Bitcoin, but my background in real estate and valuation is what makes, my voice a little bit different than a lot of other people, because I'm always seeing that connection between Bitcoin and real estate. Now, I thought about real estate because her father was an executive at this company. And he was an executive. They owned the building, all these kind of things. But when the government starts to behave a certain way, your ownership of that real estate doesn't really matter. I've made the connection in previous episodes of this series of Stack Sats or Die Trying, this podcast, shall I say, about how, theoretically, we don't own any of this land. It's all government controlled. Now, we have the right to purchase, get a mortgage, right? And do all these things and call ourselves owners. But if we don't pay our taxes, what happens to our property, right? We have to pay our fair share. Eminent domain, escheat. There are a lot of ways that our property can be hindered or encumbered if we don't do what the government wants us to do. So the government technically owns the property. Now, that doesn't mean that it's better to be a renter than to, own property, because there are rights that come, the bundle of rights that come with what's considered home ownership. And this is not a real estate show, so I'm not going to get into what the actual bundle of rights are. Do your Googles. Or you could join us on our Patreon, blackwealthrebels.com, because I talk real estate, I go deeper into real estate within, the Patreon walls. Now, I was thinking about this in the Anne Frank house because I'm like, listen, if you're not familiar with what happened in World War II, when Hitler and his army, the Nazis, were taking over land, when they took over territories, it didn't matter who on paper owned those properties, right? I'm sending you guys to concentration camps, so that really didn't matter. And it made me think about how would Bitcoin fit in that time? So one of the great things about Bitcoin is you can control your value in your head. When you get your private keys, 12 or 24 words, you can literally memorize them and take your value. Now, would that have helped in this situation? Probably not. But at the end of the day, that still would have been an option if it existed in this time. Now, again, this is just a mental exercise for me as, I'm walking through this museum and learning and getting inspired. Now, I'll tell you why I was inspired. I was inspired because her written word, the power of her words that still exist and telling her story was so powerful. That's kind of what inspired me, but it just made me think, how would you be able to react to that financially speaking, right? If you have resources, how can you, counteract? And I think Bitcoin still would have been more powerful because even before you were captured, you would have been able to transact just having that Bitcoin. So you already have the network that you built through relationships, but having, your value kind of secured in your head is next level. And I don't think most people get this. And the reason most people don't get this is because they don't go down the rabbit hole. They don't do the research. They don't run nodes. They don't understand securing your own value, because most people, if you look at the data, they buy cryptocurrency or Bitcoin and they leave it on the exchange. They never take the next step of securing it personally. When you take that step, you start to think, and it starts to make you realize, like, hold on, this is different than owning stock. This is different than owning real estate. This is different than owning artwork. This is different than owning gold. This is different than anything else, because unless you have my words, you don't have my value. Many people make the mistake of thinking that when they get a cold storage solution, that the actual Bitcoin sits on that hardware wallet, which it doesn't. The hardware wallet are literally just keys. You're signing transactions on the quote unquote blockchain. And that, hey, join the Patreon. We'll have a class go deeper into that. But if you go down the rabbit hole of studying, and I'll say this on every episode, man, we got to study more. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody's looking at price action. Forget price. Let's get down to education. Let's make sure that we understand the asset, understand the value in having censorship resistant money that you can control. So I think if you have that in those days, would it have been completely foolproof and solved all the issues? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just showing you what I start to think about as I walk through this and I'm getting inspired and figuring out how it relates to, the things that I care about. So I'm thinking about this and I'm like, that would have been different to really just kind of control your value. And it also made me think, like, are you prepared? Are any of us prepared? Anybody watching this, listening to the audio version of the podcast, for what the doomsday people online, they call it a SHTF moment. Shit hits the fan moment. Are you prepared for a shit hits the fan moment? There's a book that I'm currently reading. It's called Check Your Financial Privilege. I believe the author's name is like Alex Gladstein or something. It's a Bitcoin related book, but it talks about the value of Bitcoin, not just in our country, but as you start to travel the world and understand this is a global currency. How do I know it's a global currency, right? Because I wear Bitcoin gear around. That's what I do. Like, I'm saying, you're either gonna find me in like, all black, just plain, minimalist shirt, or a Bitcoin shirt. That's how I'm, that's how I give it up. So in the conference that I was speaking at, there were people literally from all across the world, Ireland, Belgium, all parts of the United States, Africa, the Eastern Europe, Western Europe, all over the place. And by me wearing Bitcoin shirts, I got into a lot of conversations. And people have different perspectives. Some people were Bitcoin haters. Some people were like, yo, I'm a Bitcoiner too, which is always interesting because that shows you just how powerful the network is. I met several people from Europe who were Bitcoiners and we had great conversations. So shout out to y'all in case y'all watching this. But we have to really check our financial privilege and understand that this is a global currency that is saving lives. A lot of us are so consumed with number go up technology. We're like, yo, the value is this, the value is this. Not understanding that this gives us the ability to transact away from the government, away from big corporations, and to exchange value in the power of that. So sometimes we need to check our financial privilege and really do our research and figure out how people across the world are using this savings technology. But when I talk about a SHTF moment, right? How many of us are prepared for this? Because when you talk about financial privilege, we're accustomed, specifically in the States, to having banking that works, to having a government that, does everything in its power to protect us. But what happens if that no longer exists? Are we prepared for that? You know what I'm saying? Like, are we prepared to do things to survive, not just thrive? A lot of people who talk about Bitcoin talk about the number going up and getting rich and buying Lambos. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about literal survival. Now, can you operate Bitcoin if the internet goes down? Absolutely. Again, it's probably another class we're going to do somewhere else, because there are solutions to that, believe it or not. But at the end of the day, how prepared are you? How prepared are you? What do you have in your home? And I'm not trying to turn anybody into a doomsday prepper. But if your government was to turn on you, especially people in my community, like, how prepared are you? And this isn't one of those things where I'm getting political and talking about who's in office and what's going to happen. I don't believe in the boogeyman. I believe in doing for self. I believe in doing for your own community. And not really pointing the finger. I believe in do for self. That's how I was raised. That's the environment I was brought up in. Doesn't mean that I don't acknowledge injustices. It doesn't mean that I don't acknowledge systems put in place to harm specific people. But getting back to the point, are you prepared for those kind of moments? It made me think about and do some sort of inventory in my own life. Do I have food stock? Do I have ammo stock? Do I have all these things stocked? Do I have sats that I'm able to use if the internet goes out? The experience of going through the Anne Frank house also made me think about who tells your story if you're no longer here. What happens if you're no longer here? Again, I'm not here to tell her entire story. It's very powerful. You can look it up. There's been movies, several books. But if I'm being completely honest, until going through this experience, I didn't have a full appreciation or understanding of not only what she went through, but even how the story got out. So, spoiler alert, if I can say that, they were captured. Anne Frank ended up passing away in a concentration camp or what have you, but her father was the only one who survived. And he survived because literally he wasn't sent anywhere based upon him being sick at the time. So he ended up surviving. And, someone that was in the camp with her had her diaries, gave it to her father. He made sure that her story was published and her story was told, which is interesting because it reminds me of the Hamilton song, Who Tells Your Story? But anyway. Who lives, who dies, who tells her story? But it made me think about, as deep as I'm going, and I've went down the rabbit hole, and I'm thinking about this shit is the fan moment. It made me think about, what happens if I'm not here? I've been building up this stack at this point for 8+ years. And what happens if I'm not here? Although I don't have any Bitcoin because I lost it all in a boating accident. But it made me think about what happens if I'm not here. I'm trying all these like next level things on the Lightning Network, and I'm putting sats here and sats there. Honestly, a lot of it is to, talk about it on the show. A lot of it is because I'm curious when it comes to technology. I'm a curious person. I want to see how things work. And the deeper I study and the deeper I try things, the more I understand the value of the asset, which is why I'm all in the way I am. But it made me think about, am I preparing my family for if I'm not here in order to get access to all these things? Most of my family's not going to go down the Lightning Network rabbit hole, right? So am I putting the proper things in place so if I'm not here, my story can be told? My story, my story is about stacking stats to die trying, right? Assets in general. I'm not talking about setting up trust. I mean, a will could be part of this conversation. But are you putting in writing, creating maybe videos or leaving trails or just know-how, right? A lot of you guys have started stacking, and I know that because I get the messages. But with your words, are you securing them? Are you making sure your next of kin knows where they are? Because her story didn't have to be told, right? If no one knew how to get this stuff to her father, it would have never been told, and it wouldn't still be inspiring me in 2024. So that's the other way I related it to this experience was, it made me think about, am I doing all the right things? And to be completely transparent with you guys, there were some holes in terms of how I had things set up. I've created videos. I've let my folks know, and I have them. I even have those stashed different from where I have my hardware wallet stashed. But I have kind of a puzzle that's easy to put together. But there were some holes in my planning just based on me having millions of sats in different places from testing things out. And I want to tighten that up. I want to tighten up my planning as it pertains to Bitcoin. So that was also something that was inspiring. Tightening up my plan and make sure that I know that this all isn't in vain. You know, that I'm doing good work, but it's all not in vain, man. So those are the ways. That's what I learned. What I learned to kind of summarize this. What I learned from my experience going through the Anne Frank house is to express yourself, right? So it's a couple things here. Your network is important. Along this journey, we talk about finances on this channel, and everywhere you see me, I'm talking about finances. But I think the most valuable asset, even more valuable than Bitcoin, believe it or not, are relationships. To make sure we're constantly working on relationships in our network. I learned, that's something that made me think about, and I learned from Anne Frank. Real estate is still important, but it's not as important as most of us think, because our government still has a certain level of control that, there's nothing we can do about it. Doesn't mean we shouldn't operate in the space, because real estate is the best business there is, in my opinion. So that's something that I learned from, walking through the Anne Frank house and learning that history. Something else I learned is the importance of communicating and telling your story and making sure that you have things in place. So if you're not here, all your work can still, not be done in vain, man. That's some of the things that I learned from Anne Frank house. I do want to say rest in power to Anne Frank. Thinking about the fact that you wrote this in that annex and inspired me in 2024 is absolutely insane. You know what I mean? I learned a lot through this past trip. I travel a lot, but certain trips are better than others. This is probably one of the best trips I've taken in the last several years. Because it wasn't just, for pleasure or just for the work, speaking or what have you. I think I learned a lot. Even where the property was located, looking at the real estate aspect of it, looking at how the city was built around the canals, and the importance of using your environment when developing real estate. That's something that I took from this trip, right? Even looking at where this property was located specifically. So it was a lot of learning outside of, just the work, and also the history and the food. The food was fire too. Yeah, I'm a greedy SOB. So, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying?
Big bag, big bag, big bag, big bag. Yeah, my bag is loaded up with snacks and different foods.
Last but not least, before I get out of here on episode 39, man, a lot of folks, man, say, yo, I've been too hard on the shit coiners, man. So I want to make this clear. My apologies to all the shit coiners. I'm still Bitcoin only. I don't care about anything you got going on. Just leave me alone. But I'm gonna stop slandering y'all, man. So that is my apology. Hope you accept my apology. If not, that's between you and your God.
Apologize to all of you for what I did. It was very wrong, and I am very sorry. I just would like to move on and lead a normal life. Get a job and a wife and change my ways. And I hope this apology impresses you, even though my grandmother made me do it and I don't really mean it.
But for my fellow Bitcoiners out there, man, you already know what it is. Do all the YouTubian stuff. Like, comment, subscribe, share, give me some feedback. I know this may have been a little bit longer than the most recent episodes. What do you think about my experience in terms of what I shared with you guys so far? Because I got more coming on the way. Pause.
In Jesus' name.
And I'll share that with you as well. But what do you think about Anne Frank? How much did you know about the Anne Frank story? What do you think about the Anne Frank story? And what do you think about my perspective? How, that what it actually made me think about in terms of Bitcoin and real estate. I know some people may not like this video because they're gonna be like, yo, you are absolutely tripping. But when I tell you, I relate everything to Bitcoin and real estate. I mean, everything. I was watching football on Thanksgiving, family's over. My nephew sitting there, brothers there, but a whole family's there. And there was like a play during a Lions game and dude leapfrogged him. And I don't know how I got there, but it started making me talking about the Bitcoin network. I could be watching a basketball game, football game. You know what I'm saying? I was watching the Gilded Age on Max the other day. And even that, somehow I related that to, a Bitcoin story. So that's the way my brain works, y'all. I read so much about Bitcoin that I relate kind of everything to it. Anyway, man, love y'all. Please stay safe out there. Join us Friday live. We have what we call Freedom Fridays now. We've revamped our Friday show. It's part of the Black Wealth Rebels Network. Go to blackwealthrebels.com, look up our Patreon. We give away Bitcoin every Friday. You know what I'm saying? All you got to do is show up, participate in the show, leave us some comments or whatever, and you'll be put into our Bitcoin giveaway. We'll be giving away Bitcoin at this point for like, 4 to 8 years I've been here. We just been giving it away. Literally, we give it away doing webinars. We give it away every Friday. So we're just giving Bitcoin away. Our money goes back out in the street. Also, special shout out to, and I haven't really told anyone this yet because it's probably going to be making the announcement during the beginning of next year. We're towards December, but I give everyone to, all my information to the Stack Sats audience first. And if you're listening, if you are a member of our Patreon, you get this episode before it hits YouTube. So shout out to y'all. But I've been offered a board seat for Philadelphia Inspiring Minds, which is an amazing program. Just look up Philadelphia Inspiring Minds. And I've been offered a board seat to try to, put more work into the community. I'm completely excited about this because the work that they do, I can see it. It's tangible. It helps kids that look just like me. And again, do for self, not sitting around begging anybody for help. Gonna get out here and make the world a better place. You know what I'm saying? To quote Michael Jackson, take a look at yourself and then make the change. You dig?
If you wanna make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change.
Love y'all. Appreciate y'all. Always stack sats or die trying. Peace.